Hi everybody, Lisa here from Cool Kids Hub. So today I wanted to talk about witching hour. What is it and how on earth do you survive it? So first of all I want to start by saying that it shouldn't be called witching hour, it should probably be called witching hours. Normally you will find that this period where your baby is increasingly unsettled happens in that early to late evening. So normally between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. Now during this time, some babies are really just unsettled for a couple of hours, whereas some babies are unsettled for a large chunk of that time. The one thing I want to tell you about witching hour is know that you are not alone and this phase, like all other phases your little one is going to go through, does not last forever. Generally, witching hour peaks at around that 6 week mark, which also often kind of coincides when when babies are getting some of their vaccinations. But it does generally settle around that 3 month mark. Some babies are only unsettled for a couple of weeks, some babies for a few weeks, but it does generally pass. So, what are some of the signs that your little one might be suffering from witching hour? Well, first of all, maybe you've got a generally happy-go-lucky baby that all of a sudden at this time, this late, sort of early to late evening, just can't be settled no matter what you do. That's a sure sign your baby's going through witching hour. Another sign is that you have a baby that all the usual tricks that you know that to get your little one to sleep are just not working. You're doing all the things you would do when your baby's unsettled, maybe shushing and rocking and all these kinds of things. And despite your best efforts, your little one is remaining unsettled. And the third sign that you're probably experiencing or your little one's experiencing witching hour is that they may either cluster feed but still not settle or actually reject feeding completely and then they're just fussing the whole time. And I know this was the case with my son. He would just not feed, but he was just fussing like as if he was hungry. So these are signs that your little one is experiencing witching hour. Now, what are the causes of witching hour? Well, this is divided. In fact, there are some experts that say witching hour doesn't even exist, and also some parents that are lucky enough their baby just sails through and they have no problems whatsoever. However, those of us that have experienced witching hour know it well and truly does exist. So what are some of the theories about what could be causing this? Well, one theory is the tempo in the household is changing. So think about it, at that sort of early evening is when there's a lot of activity in the household. Maybe other children are getting picked up from daycares, partners are coming home, dinner's being cooked, maybe televisions are on. And all this sort of activity in the house can unsettle the baby. So that's one theory. The other theory is that your babies become overtired. So this is a little bit of a vicious circle. So all this activity is causing them to be unsettled. They won't go to sleep and it goes past their normal bedtime. And the more it goes past their bedtime, the more tired they become and the more fussy they become. So really it just kind of compounds itself. Another theory is that there is low milk supply. So this is normal for mom's milk supply to be lower in the evening because the hormone that actually produces the milk, prolactin, is actually lower in the evening. So it's perfectly normal for that milk supply to be lower, but this is also one theory. And a lower milk supply is just frustrating for a hungry, tired little baby. And then the last sort of theory around why does this witching hour even exist is linked to growth spurts. So if you think in that first year, your baby goes through a lot of development and a lot of growth spurts, but a lot of these particularly happen in those first few months. So there's some that theorize that potentially all this fussiness is just linked to these growth spurts that are happening in their first few months of life. So what are some of the tips for surviving witching hour? Well, tip number 1 is keep your baby close. Now this might seem like an obvious one, but this is the time, if your baby's really unsettled, they're probably not going to go to sleep if you try and put them down. In fact, they're probably just going to cry even more. So keep your little one close. It might be the time to put them into a carrier, maybe take them for a walk. Sometimes that change of scenery can often settle your little one. The important thing is just keep them close to you. This will often settle them a lot easier. So tip number 2 is to don't ditch your bedtime routine. So your normal bedtime routine that you currently have in place, which might involve a bath and a baby massage, a change and a feed, and then a book or a lullaby, keep that routine. What you don't want is to confuse your baby even more. Still keep to that routine. This will still send signals to your baby that sleep is now expected. So even if your baby is fussing and even if they cry while you're bathing them, etc., just still keep to that routine. So tip number 3 is maybe take a bath together. Often the warm water just really soothes your little one, and then obviously with you being close to them, it helps to calm and relax them as well. And honestly, you might just be relax and calm you too by having a nice warm bath. So try taking a bath together. This does often just help to calm your baby. Tip number 4 is remind yourself that all babies sleep eventually. Now I know when they're crying and they're fussing and they're crying and fussing for hours, it might seem like they're never going to go to sleep, but all babies do eventually fall asleep. Often from exhaustion, but they do fall asleep. So when they're crying and fussing, just remind yourself that eventually they will fall asleep. You'll be able to put them down and you'll also be able to get some sleep. It doesn't last forever. Really, typically it's in that, like I said, early to late evening. So tip number 5 is ask for help. If you can, and if you're able, get your partner or maybe parents to just help out in this time. Maybe just take the baby for half an hour so you can have a bath or a shower, just so you can just have some time away. Because when the baby is fussing and crying like that, it can be really, really frustrating dealing with that for hours on end. So if you can and if you're able, ask for help. Tip number 6 is offer a feed. So like I said, during this time, some babies will actually cluster feed and others might reject the feed completely. If you offer a feed and they reject it, don't be concerned. This was definitely the case with my son. In fact, one night I thought, oh my goodness, something's wrong with my breast milk, and I sent my husband off to go and buy some formula. We didn't have any because I was breastfeeding at the time, and even that he rejected. So just know that some babies do reject the feed, but you can offer a feed. This might help to calm them. So tip number 7 is try skin to skin. Often just that contact with yourself where they feel the warmth of you can calm them. And also you can enjoy those little snuggles with your little one. They'll probably be calm in that time. So you'll be calm, they'll be calm, and you can enjoy some snuggles. But skin to skin can definitely help to relax your baby. So tip number 8 is try and be organized. And I know this is a bit difficult, especially if you have other children and things like that are going on. But where possible, try and just get ahead of the switching hour. Have like dinners prepared beforehand. If you are bottle feeding, have your bottles prepared beforehand. This way you're not trying to run around in the middle of witching hour while your baby's crying, trying to make bottles, etc. Also make sure you get yourself some food and snacks and drinks that you might need to survive those few hours, but just try and be prepared. So tip number 9 is to be flexible. Like I said, although you want to stick to your routines and all those things, you also need to be a little bit flexible. If you have to rock your baby to sleep and if you have to shush them to sleep, this is one time you just need to do whatever you have to do to get your little one to sleep. So just be flexible and do whatever you have to do to help them to sleep in this time. And then tip number 10 is try and reduce stimulation. So I spoke earlier about one of the theories around why there's witching hour is because there's this increase in tempo in the house. So if you can, dim the lights, lower the noise levels like from TVs and other noise in the house. I know that's not always possible, especially if you have other children. There's a lot of activity going on, but try to keep the noise levels lower. This will definitely help to not cause your little one to become overstimulated. So when should you potentially be concerned or speak to a pediatrician? Well, if your baby cries for 3 hours or more constantly, I'm not talking about fussing on and off, I'm talking about constant crying for 3 days or more, then you might want to consider talking to a pediatrician. Now, it could be as simple as your little one suffering from colic, because this does also start around that 6-week mark and generally subsides by around 3 month mark. And when your baby's got colic, you'll normally see that because they'll arch their back, they pull their legs up to their tummies. So if you're seeing any of those signs, then there's a chance that the increased fussiness is also linked to their colic. Or the other thing is they could be suffering from reflux. Again, you'll see signs of this by more frequent spit ups. So if again you're getting an increased fussiness and you're seeing this increase in spit ups, potentially your baby's suffering from reflux. And in these cases, it's best to speak to a pediatrician. But like I said, reaching hour is normal. So if your baby's just fussing on and off for these hours every evening for a couple of weeks or a few weeks, it's perfectly normal and it will pass. So hopefully these tips will help you to survive witching hour. Like I said, this is just a phase that your baby will go through, and they'll go through many phases as they grow. But good luck. Till next time. Bye.